Just take a deep breath, everyone. Close your eyes. Take another deep breath. And there is great power in a group of people who are praying and joining their hearts and minds together in spiritual exploration. So we know that the presence and power of God is quickened and activated on our behalf, within us and all around us. Make this an extraordinary experience this morning, maybe filled with ahas and clarity. And so, Spirit, we just give thanks for your guidance, for your divine order established in this time together, and for blessing each one here. We pray this knowing that it is unfolding in perfect divine order, and so it is, and we all say, thank you, God. Amen.
Thank you, God.
Okay, so we have, whoops, let me move this a little bit. We have today and next Wednesday. I just wanted to share with you that in August, I'm going to do a Wednesday class on prayer. So hope you'll come on back then. And reminder that we're together this morning to listen with open heart and mind, to share from the first person I. So we're not saying you, but make it personal, because then it is incredibly powerful. Stay with the topic. Respect each other's opinions. This is not a debate, so we might disagree with something someone says, but that's okay. Everyone gets to have their own opinion, their own belief, their own sense of things. But what happens is when we get together, there's a synergy that happens, and ahas and openings can develop. Finally, consider what qualities you are willing to bring to the discussion. So, for example, are you willing to be curious, interested, focused, 100% present, attentive, respectful? Just take a moment and consider maybe 3 or 4 qualities that you're willing to demonstrate this morning in our time together. Hey, there's Bill. Hi, Bill. Glad you're here. Okay. Move this again.
Unmute. Okay, I'm doing okay.
Good. I think this is where we ended last time. What is your understanding of racism? And so I kept this in for this week, and you see there I said consider this again as a result of our last conversation, or any thoughts you've had, anything you've contemplated. So the floor is open for anyone who's willing to share. What is your understanding of racism?
I think that it's discrimination, treating other people unequally, with sex, gender, color, race, whatever.
So did you all hear Linda? Linda's with us in the room, in the classroom this morning. So Linda said, one more, loud and clear, Linda.
I think that that racism is a form of discrimination, which other people are treated unequally because of certain qualities, their gender, the color of their skin, their nationality.
Great. Great, thank you. Anybody else? This is participative. No more
Sharon,
comments?
I'm not able to hear very well,
Okay.
but there's something with my computer and Zoom. I haven't figured it out yet, so I can hear you barely. I was not part of the last discussion on this subject, but racism to me, and if I'm wrong, I apologize to the group. It's people's opinions of something going wrong with some aspect of their lives, be it they're offended by name calling, or they're offended by actions of others. And I guess that's kind of my thought on the subject.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that this is the book I'm using. And one of the, actually a couple of the chapters in the book, Kendi, who is Black, talks about a lot about Black people judging Black people, and almost a caste system among Black people. So he even shared when he went to college at Florida A&M, which is primarily a Black college or university, that he, not unlike many other Black people, got contact lenses that made his eyes look lighter as a way of feeling not Black. So it's interesting how racism can express itself as Black against Black, and how it can express as, well, I have a question coming up later that speaks to this. Darlene?
Okay. You know, if we're talking about racism as being a judgment of other people, we are all racist at a certain point. I mean, we judge people for their economic standards. Women judge men, men judge women, all of that. And the important thing is, and I guess because I love unity and I love what it says and so forth, is that we have to see the child of God within each person. Doesn't mean we have to accept.
Wait, who's we?
I.
Yeah.
We have to look at each person individually, see them as ourselves, and in our actions, in our words, treat others the way that we want to be. Yes, I think there's going to be racism all the time. Unfortunately, at least in this particular life experience. I don't remember the rest of my life experiences. But I try to really use the message that I hear in unity and that I read about is to treat people the way I want to be treated.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean I accept all the actions,
Right. Right.
but to treat the person with respect.
Thank you. Thank you. Good.
Hi,
What else?
this is
Hi,
Kath.
Nancy. Kath, go ahead.
I just thought it was interesting when you said that he talks about the racism among Blacks, where they are racist among themselves. My late husband was Jewish, and I used to tease him about that he was so racist against other Jews. He was always using, jokingly, really racist terms that Jews are accused of all the time. And you see it with Black people where they can use the word nigger, but white people can't. And it's just interesting that that kind of internal racism is accepted, kind of. I mean, I don't know how well it's accepted, but it's, if you're doing it to your own, it's okay, but you can't do it to other people. You follow me?
Yes, I do. Uh-huh. Great, thank you, Kath. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Hang on, Maya. Unmute yourself, say, unmute yourself.
I thought
There you go. Oh, unmute yourself.
I can't see it. So
There.
anyway, so I was married to a black man and he was like that, but he was also a bigot because he didn't like Mexicans. He didn't like most whites. He didn't like a lot of blacks. So he was the epitome of a racist.
Got it. Got it. Thank you. Maya.
yeah, I think I brought this up last time. One of the, I see as one of the burdens on blacks is that any black person is held accountable for all black people. When we look at our different cultures, we don't really get that. I mean, people don't need for everything that every white woman or white, Irish woman has done. They don't even attempt to. There may be times if it happens, it's playful or something, but the burden is really there. I mean, we see that in a black man who's a doctor gets stopped by the police and then is treated the exact same way that some black criminal is. Even when the doctor is showing documentation or identification, who he is,
Yeah.
And so I can understand there being a certain amount of anger. It's like when my kids were out someplace, it's like they've embarrassed me, right? Nobody's going to want his dad again. I can get really angry about that, right?
Yeah.
They made me look bad.
Yeah.
So I can understand that and how horrible that a burden that is for blacks.
Thank you. Right
So
on.
I understand the caste, that you were mentioning the caste groupings. I can see the pain that black person have for those that really are causing trouble.
Yes. Anybody else before I move on?
Yeah,
Hi, Sharon.
I'll let Nancy go first and then I'll go.
Okay, thank you. Nancy,
Hi,
I
Nancy.
was surprised to learn that there was racism within the African American community based upon the color of the skin, that the lighter the skin was more valued, more accepted, and they had prejudice against Africans of darker skin. And I just found that very surprising. I had no idea.
Good. I mean, good that you had no idea and now you do. That's what this is really all about.
And also African Americans have lighter skin.
Yeah, that's
I
what she,
lived with it, so I know.
well, she said there was the prejudice. The same thing is true, by the way, in the Indian culture. Okay, anything else before we move on?
Yeah, in Hotel Rwanda, Nancy was saying she was surprised to see that prejudice. It was, I don't know if you all saw that movie, but that was amazing. It was black against black, and it was based on skin shade. And they murdered each other. I mean, it was a horrible revolution between different shades of black.
Yeah. What's the word for that, you guys? Genocide.
Not necessarily.
I think it was in one of those movies. I don't know if it was Rwanda or another one, but there's this thing in court where somebody says to this person, "Are you calling you're more brown than black?" And the black person says to the judge, "Why do you call yourself white? You're more pink than white." So it's just those challenging, challenging those terms and what we've fallen into accepting or believing.
Subtle. Yes. Who else? I thought okay, I'm
I
going
just
on.
want one more thing on my point about Hotel Rwanda.
Yeah.
That wasn't in the United States, so it's not like this is a U.S. problem. That was in Africa.
Right. right? If we look at
Oh,
European countries who have closed their borders.
hello.
Hi, Joe.
Hi. I had something to say. I've had my hand up for a long time.
Oh, I didn't see your picture. Sorry. Go ahead. So sorry.
I have a potluck group that meets, that did meet, and one of the women in it, she's in a black family, and she had 3 siblings who were like her. They had no color in their skin. They were totally white. And their mom, the rest of them were all dark. They would put them in the closet when they had somebody come over.
Wow.
And
Wow.
she's totally estranged from her family. It's such a sad thing. And she was a
Wow.
really nice person. You know, it was just sad to see that a family would do that.
Yes. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Who else have I got? Okay. And Cosette, Betty, Mary, you want to add anything to what's been said already before I go on? No.
No, thank you. Unmuted. Thank you, though. Not right now.
Okay, great. Alrighty, next. So this is, I think we did this one last year too. I mean, last time we met. Anti-racism is a transformative concept that reorients and re-energizes the conversation about racism and points us toward liberating new ways of thinking about ourselves and others. So I guess the question would be then, as a result of even what's been happening in the news, what we've watched and listened to in the news, and our conversation on July 8th and the week that has transpired until today, have you had any thoughts, I should say, or have you noticed any shifts or awarenesses that you now have that you didn't? It would be in the arena of anti-racism. No?
Reverend Sharon?
Yes.
I have, maybe it's probably more of a question.
Who is this, Karen?
It's Mary. I'm sorry.
Mary. Hi, Mary. Okay, go ahead.
I'm wondering about defining anti-racism, if you could do that. I haven't read the book, so I'm kind of struggling with what non-racism is and anti-racism. And I think this is wonderful that it says it reorients and re-energizes the conversation. But sorry, I don't know what he has said about that. Could you kind of clarify anti-racism and then how he thinks that reorients and re-energizes the conversation? Do you have those thoughts?
Yeah, you know, it's let me see if I can find his on here. I think I have. Hang on, Mary, and all of you. I think I have his definition. I'm
That would
sorry?
be great.
Yeah, okay, here we go. Let me get to another slide, and I'll give you his definition of it in brief, because throughout the book, he makes distinctions around the whole arena of racism. Being, it's not just simply I'm prejudiced against blacks. You know, it's a huge arena, and
Right.
down in here, as you all have talked about, you know, blacks distinguishing colors, ranges of colors in each other, Indians, and then there's the, not just the ethnicities, there's religion, politics. I mean, if you stop and think of all the ways human beings judge one another, he would put that in the arena of anti-racism
Okay.
and racism. So, but let me get to that that slide. Hang on a sec.
One of the things that comforted me last time was hearing people share where they were in the journey. I don't see it as ever arriving. I mean, I'm probably among one of the least racist people because of all of my involvement, fighting racism, losing jobs over racism, while trying to fight it. But there's still always, as Darlene was saying, there are still always those moments when I'll catch myself having a thought that tells me I need to deal with something.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had people who don't know me and don't know my history accuse me of being racist, only because I'm white and they're black. So there's always those pieces that provide opportunities to grow. So I see it as this getting on this path that is never ending.
Great.
And a willingness to be introspective and face.
And aware.
Yes.
Hi, Molly. Glad you're here, Molly.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, Mary and all of us. So this is, wait, let me move this a bit here. This is what Kendi said about racism. So he says, racism is a powerful system that creates false hierarchies of human value. It extends beyond race, from the way we regard people of different ethnicities and skin color, to the way we treat people of different sexes, gender identities, and body types. So here, I found a picture that I thought represented it. So over here on the left side is a racist view of equality. Over here on the right is an anti-racist view of equality. Okay, I'm going to go back. Was that helpful, Mary?
Yes, it's very helpful because that's what it's so his premise is that we should be anti all those things that we look for that are different or that we find a bias against. He thinks we should be anti that.
And what he points to often in the book is that it is a policy issue.
Okay.
Systemic. So the policy, governmental policies, educational policy, whatever, that equalizes the playing field.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
I'm going back. Whoops, I went the wrong way, sorry. Okay, any comments here about this? Points us toward liberating new ways of thinking about ourselves and others. Have you, in the last couple of weeks then, become aware of any new way of thinking about racism or anti-racism? Any awarenesses? Going. Betty, unmute yourself, Betty. Unmute yourself. You're still muted. There you go.
Right, sorry about that. When I first saw you promoting this series, it sounded very interesting, but I was a little leery because I'm always a little concerned when anybody is anti-anything. And at first I thought, well, we shouldn't be anti-racists because those people are people too. In other words, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But you're talking about the fact that racism is a a very real thing, and it's amongst all people. And so it's the factor that has to be changed. But when it says liberating new ways about thinking ourselves and others, I agree, we have a lot of thinking to do about how we see other people. But what we do with that, I think we have to be aware. I want to tell a really quick story. This little monkey was up on a tree in the jungle looking down at this lovely little silvery pond, and there was a little fish swimming around in there. It was a beautiful scene. But the monkey heard that there was a big storm coming, and all the water in the river was going to come rushing down into that pond full of trees and everything. So obeying the golden rule, he went down to save the fish, and he ran down, grabbed the fish, and brought him up into the tree. Well, that was good for the monkey, but the fish wasn't too happy because he was dead. So the golden rule shouldn't be do as we want it to be done to us.
Right.
Do as they want it to be done to them.
Right. That's right in line with what we're talking about here.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else before I go to the next slide?
I think that
Sharon?
one of the things that I noticed is that there's so much anger on both sides that it stops communication a lot of times. And it has to be, it's kind of like if you fight with a pig in the mud, you both get hurt. So if you've got one person angry and the other person angry, you're not going to communicate. So you really have to take time now and sit back and hold on. And I know I'm getting angry sometimes watching what's going on TV, mostly because of the disruption and stuff for me. But that's the time that we have to sit back.
Who has to?
I have to, well, I'm on the same page, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. I'm used to doing that in schools, I guess.
Well,
We're in June.
and we all do. What I've experienced though is that when I speak for myself, it doesn't matter if everyone else is on the same page or not, then something gets fired up in here. Oh, that is what I believe.
When I use I statements, the other take what they like and leave the rest.
Yeah.
And there's less for conflict if I use I statements.
Yeah. Hopefully.
If I
Sharon?
do,
Speak up, Maya.
when you use you, we, or you, it's what Marshall Rosenberg calls violent communication.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's very provocative
Yeah.
to say you.
Yeah.
Or to assume that there's a we when I make unpredictable.
Right. Bill, were you going to say something?
Yes, I apologize. I have only probably been able to hear less than a third of what people are saying. It's my system here, and I apologize for that. I have been reading the video, the charts that you put up. I'm going to leave the meeting, but before I do, I want to say one thing, and hopefully I'm semi on track. I can't help it, I'm a 75-year-old white guy. When I'm in Sun City, and we're snowbirds, my wife and I, when I'm in Sun City, I see absolutely nothing related to this except on TV. I go to church, I go to the store, I meet with my friends. Yes, they're mostly white folks, but we never down talk the stuff that's going on, and I think the subject of this is that one man that was killed in Minnesota by a police officer is what started this discussion. And I believe, and I don't know 100% of the facts, but I believe he was doing some bad things, and yeah, the police shouldn't have necessarily have killed him, but also he was as I understand, he was doing some pretty bad stuff. Here in Seattle, since we've come home, the city of Seattle is been in an uproar and all about this activity and a lot of damage and destruction going on. Well, it's not part of my life other than watching it on TV. And I guess I just will continue to watch from afar. I don't agree with a lot of it. I think a lot of the problems that people are complaining about, they've somewhat brought on themselves. If I hear that there's a racist activity in the community, I'm sure as heck not going towards it. I'm going the opposite direction. So I hope I haven't ruined the discussion, Sharon, but
Not at all. Not at all. But
since I can't hear very well, I even put on these things and it still doesn't help.
oh, I'm sorry you have to leave, Bill. Thank you. Thank you for being here for the time you were. We're going to meet next week. What I can say is, if you want to stay just to test a few more minutes, I can ask everyone to speak up and speak slowly.
Let's try that. Sure.
Okay, let's
Thank
try
you.
it. You're welcome. All right, anybody else before I move on?
Yes, I want to say that as far as racism goes, I have been guilty of saying words against Mexicans, words that I have heard from other people that I don't necessarily believe, but it's somebody else's opinion. And after you actually look at it, it's wrong to express somebody else's opinion through your mouth.
Good point. Who was it? Who was speaking just now?
Sig?
Hi, Sig. Thanks. If you all would please identify yourselves. I can't see everybody on my screen all at once, so I'm not sure who's speaking, but if you would just say your name when you come in to share, thank you. Okay. Anybody else to move
Hi.
on?
Hi, Reverend Sharon. This is Ann Halverson.
Hi,
One of
Ann.
the things that struck me in these conversations was finding out that after world wars, when the soldiers would come home, the benefits were provided to them to help them buy their homes and get into businesses and in education. And then finding out that the Black communities were not entitled to the same benefits. And that was something I had no idea occurred. And that surprised me quite a bit. So even though I live in, white communities and don't have a lot of ethnic companions in my life at this point in my life, I didn't know there were as many inadequacies that were out of the individual's control as there truly is. And those are the things that I just think we have to fix that. We have to fix the opportunities, because I always thought everybody has the same opportunity. If you take advantage of it, you will be successful. Now I find that's just not true. That was naive of me. And for that, I want to learn.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Ann. Hey, Bill, did you hear that okay? No. He may have left us. But please be sure that you speak loud and clear when you share so we can all benefit. Okay, I'm going.
Sharon, it's Betty. Yeah, I just want to add about being able to hear. I can hear everybody pretty well, except Karen. There's such an echo that I really have trouble. And I don't know if the other people have the same problem. I didn't bring it up because I don't want to take up your time. But is there a way that she can use the microphone a little closer or something? Okay, I'll get out of your way.
Where's the echo, Betty?
Karen, hey, whenever she speaks, I can only get a few of the words because it's like, it's not an electronic echo. It sounds like the room that she's in. Is she in the same?
Oh, okay. And it's not, is it me?
No, I can hear everybody else.
Karen,
Yeah.
okay. All right. Thanks, Betty.
Okay.
Hi, this is
Go,
Kathy.
y'all.
I'm going to just talk to that. Karen has 3 different things going, her phone and her iPad and her computer. And I'm afraid to mute her because I don't want her to not be able to talk and she gets kind of lost. So it's going to be echoing because she's got 3 going in the same room. So Karen, if you can mute 2 of them and then just keep your phone on maybe, then they'll get rid of that echo.
Where did she go? Karen, are you there?
Yeah?
Hi, Karen.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I don't think, have you shared yet?
No, I didn't know anybody could hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Wow. Oh my.
Would you like to say anything?
Oh my gosh, you're kind of lucky that I didn't know. Because I had a whole bunch of things to say.
Reverend Sharon, maybe it wasn't Karen, but the yellow light was around her. That's who I thought it was. Anybody else knew who that was that we couldn't hear well?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. I don't want to take any more time. Thank you.
You're welcome. Karen, what were you saying?
Yeah, it was the lady that's in the where you are, Sharon. That's the one I can't hear when she talks, the one that's in the room with you.
Oh, maybe Linda?
Yeah.
Linda's far away from the microphone.
Can you hear me now?
How do you
Barely.
like me? Okay, let me get back to Karen. Karen, what were you going to say?
After Bill talked, that put me in a whole different place, I have to tell you. I think the interesting thing is that we need to walk in someone else's shoes before we judge them. And I think that for me, judgment comes from not knowing the other. The other is people separated, not me. Does that make sense?
Yes.
If I realize we're all one, we're all connected, it's very hard to be judgmental. But in looking at someone and seeing them different, then I began to compare. And judgment occurs in me without knowing them and without experiencing them. The other thing I wanted to say is I worked with a large Hispanic community in schools in Washington State. And in one particular family, there was one child born much darker than the others, and he was always called the N-word in the family. Wow. Which just broke my heart because he was not a gifted boy intellectually, but so he couldn't figure out ways to cope with it. Don't you think it's interesting, though, that our culture spends lots and lots of money to try to tan?
Say that again, a little slower.
That we spend lots of money to try to tan.
Yeah. Oh, to try and tan. Some of us do, yeah. Indeed. Thanks,
I just
Karen.
thought that was interesting.
Thank you. Good.
I didn't know I could talk.
Well, I was thinking about when Bill was talking also. I know when I go out, use the word when I go out, I don't see the prejudice that they're talking about, okay? Even when I lived in Virginia, okay? Now, when we talk about systems or policy for racism, that is a group of people, and I see how bad the government, their policies are all screwed up too. So what can we do besides vote people out, which we're not doing a really good job at in some cases, to help with that, what we call systematic racism? I don't think that the majority of people in this day and age, unless you go to certain areas, is what I would call racism. But in the system of politics or in housing, maybe the system in education and so forth, the system is what is corrupt.
So I highly recommend this book. Thank you. Thank you for what you shared, because it reminded me of a number of things he says in the book and awarenesses. One of the things, talking about systematic change and approach to creating an equal playing field for all people. He says that there are, how many? There are like 30, I can't remember the exact number of Black billionaires in the United States.
Very few.
No, billionaires. There aren't even 35
Yeah.
white billionaires. Okay, so Black billionaires who are not helping. I mean, they could contribute much of their funds to policies and elections and government and city ordinances, things like that, but they're not. So there's that opportunity available that's not being used by people who could.
Yeah, and I just wanted to comment on what you were saying before about policies, because what you were just saying, we have a federal law that says you do not discriminate. Then from there it goes through a process of rules, and there's individualized to different states and cities and so on. Then there's policies. And from the policies, there's actual implementation of those policies. There's a lot of policies out there that say we don't discriminate in towns where everybody discriminates and nobody is willing to change it. But that's the place where all these protesters now are getting changes. They're saying, we want that policy changed. We want it to be, to match what goes on.
Gotcha.
So that's happening. The protest that's going on now has brought that about. Just like in the 60s when we were marching, that was bringing about changes.
Right.
Now we're drilling down deeper and seeing where, not just does the policy say we don't discriminate, just the actual implementation of the policy. In fact, follow it. And that's the places where it doesn't. So it's the conflict between what it says and the behavior.
Got it.
I don't know if that was helpful.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think that's gone on in a lot of different, the women's movement and so forth. Where, things, groups of people have to get together and make decisions to absolutely change it. And sometimes it takes marching or whatever.
And I loved what you said before about there's so much anger that there really isn't useful communication that's coming out of it. Now there are places where that's exactly what they're doing, is bringing hands full of people to bring them together so you could manage it, as opposed to a huge protest where they are starting to talk to each other. I've done a lot of prison work, and what I discovered in doing prison work is that there is a them and us mentality on both sides. Now here's a reality. The prisoners far outweigh the number of officers. That makes the officers frightened. It can make some of them more aggressive, it can make some more conciliatory, but nevertheless, there's this fear on both sides. They have, but the smaller of the group, which is the officers, they have the authority to reward or punish prisoners. So you've got the larger group that should have the bigger voice, and those who have all the power and authority. But when they get them together and they talk, they come up with things that really do make it work.
Great. Okay, thank you. So that was a segue. I'm going to segue from that to here, where Kendi says the only way to undo racism is to consistently identify and describe it and then dismantle it. So my question is, and you spoke to this, I want to hear from some of the others of you. Billy, I want you to chime in today. How do we dismantle it? Billy?
Well, I think that it's just like anything, like peace or anything. It all begins with me, with each of us individually, changing our awareness and then asking for guidance on what is ours to do to make a difference. And just since we've had this discussion, I've had such awarenesses of how sometimes, you know, I talk about fundamental Christians. They're different than I am, right? I mean, and I don't think of it in such good terms. And I'm thinking of the difference between Democrats and Republicans and all that. So how guilty I am of thinking someone is, just because they have different views than I do, are not right. You know, that they're wrong. And that judgment does not serve me, and it certainly doesn't serve them. So when I remember who I am, I'm the Christ, and so are they, it changes the whole thing for me. But I have to be diligent, I mean, really diligent, to see the Christ in everyone that comes on the TV or comes, you know, on the sidewalk or whatever. And that's not very easy sometimes. It really isn't.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Thanks, Billy. Who else? How do we dismantle it?
This is Nancy, and I'm a strong believer that when you dismantle something, you have to supply something in its place. You can't just put an end to it. And I'm thinking of John Lewis and how he met with all the discrimination against him and his people, and how he replaced it all with love. He had no hatred towards anyone. And I think that maybe we have to dismantle the racism with love.
Thank you. Who else?
This is Linda. I think one way that I think about dismantling it is to provide equal opportunities for education and employment.
Great. Thank you. Right on. Who else?
Hi, it's Kathy. This is a little bit of a contrarian view, but I think that to start to dismantle, we have to be aware of what is true. I have heard so many, well, that one video that we were looking at of the very angry, not agitator, that's not, protester. But she's but anyhow, she talked about horrible things that happened in the past. Slavery, the massacre of the beautiful middle-class Black neighborhood in the 1800s in Oklahoma. There were two big, terrible massacres. Happened in the past, and it's wrong. We can learn from it. I believe we have learned from it. And especially when we look at the past, to be angry, a Black person today angry because of what white people did 200 years ago, I think that I probably was Black 200 years ago, and they were probably white, so they did it to me. I believe reincarnation. And so I think that we need to learn from the past, but we can't carry this anger forward because it happened in the past. And I think Darlene was talking about discrimination with housing. I'm a realtor. I would be fined $11,000 for every time I said anything discriminatory. And there are people who are set up to try to trick us. I forget what they're called, but they call and they have a really heavy accent or something like that, and they try to get us to say something or do something racist, or get them in the car and they start talking smack about race. I have to tell them we can't continue. We cannot, because one, I think it's wrong, but two, I can't afford $11,000. So I think that systemic racism certainly has existed. I was watching Jazz, I think it was, Ken Burns, and I didn't realize this, but New Orleans was very integrated. They did not have the racism. And so the white leaders got upset because Black people were taking the business away from their white clients. And so they put in the Jim Crow laws. And until I saw that documentary, I didn't realize that. I thought that it was more systemic, but the laws changed people. So the problem wasn't with the people, it was with the laws. But again, that was 100 years ago.
Say that again. The problem wasn't with the people.
It was with the laws. Not, the general public that's why New Orleans has a reputation of a lot of mulattoes, because there wasn't this racism. They were very open until some of the white leaders got upset because Black leaders were taking their business or getting their business.
Yeah.
And so it's a way to cheat, because clearly the Black business people were probably doing better service. That's why they got the better business. And,
right.
And so there are people who are corrupt, who will use the law to do wrong things. But somebody else, I think that was Darlene too, said that she thought it was really in the government that the systemic problems exist and not as much in individuals. And I agree.
Thank you. Great. Anybody else on how to dismantle racism?
There are, I know hundreds, maybe even thousands of studies on community policing. And community policing is policemen doing like many of us experienced as kids, and I grew up in Chicago, is that there were police who walked the beat. They knew the families, they knew the kids, they knew the hardships, they knew when to cut somebody some slack, when it was time to, tighten the reins. Community policing has been effective almost everywhere. But sometimes when it hasn't been effective, it's been deliberate. They were doing it for name only. They wanted to get the appearance of doing community policing so that they could, say, see, it doesn't work. But the overwhelming number of studies show community policing as being effective. So when you ask the police about that, they say, how could I not do help in this way, and this way, when that little child has come to me when they were frightened? Or, when I know that father just lost his job, or, whatever. The heart-to-heart connections that happen in community policing are just overwhelming. Beautiful stories, and all the crime rates go down in those communities.
Great.
So I'm in favor of community policing.
And I agree with you, and I would say the same thing has to happen in school.
Talk loud and clear. Talk loud.
No, I would agree, and I would say the same thing has to happen in school. When you have, I've worked in a small school, but most of the schools I have worked in have been 2,200 people, 2,200 students in classes. There's no community. You don't get to know each other. You don't build a relationship with them. So unfortunately, I believe that our society has become so, we move around a lot. we're involved in our own lives, and we don't take the time to be a community like maybe it was when we were growing.
Great, great. Yes, Betty, I see your hand.
Yes, I'm sorry, I couldn't get most of what she said, so I hope I'm not going to be repeating anything. I heard her say community. I belong to a group in Sun City West, a discussion group. In fact, they advertised for new members because they were all conservative men, and they were only just always agreeing with each other. So they wanted to get somebody in there that would have a different point of view. So I went, I and another woman. And so anyway, we have discussions now, but we respect each other like we're doing here. And I think, I'm not saying I'm dismantling racism, because I think that's a big job, but I think if we can get people just even to think about another side to a story. Some of the men that were very opposed to the government giving out welfare. And they were saying, my grandparents worked hard and I worked hard, and they can work hard too, you know. And I said, you know, you all know the story about you give a man a fish and you feed him for a day and you give him, you know. And they said, yeah, right, that's it. Teach him how to fish and he can do it himself. And I said, yeah, but these people don't even have a fishing pole.
Yeah.
You have to give them a start, give them a fishing pole, give them a chance, and they'll be able to do it too. But they're like that little guy standing on that box behind the fence. They can't see the future from where they're living now.
Thank you. And that speaks to the systemic issue again and the policy issue. Anybody else on dismantling? Okay.
Well, this is Karen. Tell me
Karen.
you can hear me.
Yep.
Yeah. I have learned in the last 20 years that most of all of this is an inside job. And I don't know how to elaborate on that. It's an inside job. If we don't want war, if I don't want war, I have to do away with the anger in me. If I don't want prejudice, I need to deal with the prejudice in me. That's all I have to say. I just think it's an inside job.
Thank you. Well, I wanna just respond to this idea of identify it and describe it. Consistently identify it and describe it, which we've been speaking to here, and you just did, Karen. And I have been, as a result of us sharing like this, in the recent couple weeks, I've been so aware of the subtleties of it. For example, I noticed myself looking at, I don't know, it was on TV, a movie, the news, whatever. I was looking at a black man and saw, oh, he's got kind of a Negro nose. I mean, come on. A Negro nose, which is something we talked about, how one person becomes the whole, how one bad action can be attributed to the whole group. So I think for me, as I think about dismantling it, is to be aware, to catch myself in my own judgments and divisive kind of thinking. I mean, it was kind of a benign noticing, but noticing, oh yeah, I see what I'm doing here. So that's my contribution.
Yeah, I just would like to tell a story. I worked for the state of Illinois. I traveled all over the state.
Speak loud.
And we usually traveled in pairs. That was the most common, was to travel in pairs. So with me was an African-American coworker of mine. We were good friends. We often had lunch together and so on. Anyway, we were in southern part of the state, and one of the big stores like Walmart or something like that. We were in it, and I went through the line, and when I paid with a credit card, and gave me the thing, and I signed off. Then my friend, who was the African American woman, went through. she used a credit card and they asked for additional identification, 2 more pieces of credit.
Yep.
I said in front of the cashier, I said to her, would you like, to my coworker, would you like us to file a complaint on this? It's obviously discrimination. There was no, we're side by side, nobody asked for my IDs, they asked 2 of hers and really looked them all over. She said, no, I don't want you. I said, okay, we got outside and she said, we are over 400 miles away from Chicago. If I file a complaint, I'm going to have to come here, you know. I mean, she was looking at the realistic side of all of this, you know, the inconvenience for her. But she brought that up several times when we were back in Chicago because it touched her that I was willing to say out loud, not that I was willing to just quietly say, you know, but that I said it out loud. So that thing of identifying it and describing it,
yeah.
I don't know what difference we made that day, but that cashier sure looked uncomfortable when we walked out.
Yeah. Seeds, planting seeds. Okay, here's a question for you. Was the conversation in your home and school, what was the conversation in your home and school regarding race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation? Or maybe we should say, what is the conversation? Because all of those things he refers to as racism, gender identity, sexual orientation, race, you know, and how many times have I caught myself saying, you know, that's what men do. That's a man for you. Sig?
Or a teenager.
Or a teen.
Yeah.
Sig, unmute yourself, Sig.
It's so small for me to see whether it's, anyway, am I unmuted now?
Yes, but speak louder, I can't hear you.
Okay, when I was in my teens, well, I grew up in a household that basically was prejudice of one thing or another. When I was in my teens, we lived out in the country and my folks built their house and there was a piece of property next door and it was bought by a lady and they built a house there, but it turned out to be a couple of lesbians. Well, my mother was so terrified of them, it was ridiculous. She said, oh, they can't come over and be in my house and I'm alone here and all this. I said, come on, Mom, please. And I was just a teenager and I knew better.
Yeah, interesting.
And my dad, I told you this last time, when we drove through the other parts of town that were less than where we lived, it was always roll up the windows and lock the doors. And I was taught prejudice, but I didn't come up prejudiced.
Yeah.
And my sister, who lives in the South, has been there since she was in her 20s, and she's now 80, has been fed all this, and she sends me emails and texts with all this prejudice and white supremacist junk, and I love her dearly, but I just don't feel good about confronting her with it because she's that kind of person. But
right on. Thank you, Sig. Who else? Who haven't I heard from?
This is
Molly.
me.
Molly.
Yes.
We found you.
What do you think about all this, Molly?
Well, I think everybody has their points, but I think we really do need to open up conversations with people of other ethnicities and listen to their stories, because that's the only way, to open up the conversations. We need communication. I'm part of the Black Lives Matter group, and I'm learning so much about everything. The main thing is I've learned to shut up and listen without making it about me or how I think about it. You know, just to shut up and listen, to hear them, because that's the problem that many of the people that I talk to have with all of it, is that they feel like they're not being heard. That's all. And if someone doesn't feel like they're being heard for long enough, they're going to do something to make you listen. Like, think of a little child. Mommy, mommy, mommy. Finally, they like do something naughty and you notice them, you know? And so this happens. And Martin Luther King even said that's what will happen if people don't listen, you know, and he didn't want that, but that's what happens when you don't listen.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm from. I'm actually working on something right now that I want to have that'll involve arts and music and spoken word, to provide a forum for people of other colors to tell their stories or to be heard.
Great.
Which will spark conversations, which will spark understanding.
Great. Thanks, Molly. Thank you. Great.
You know, I think that
Loud and clear.
Walter Russell, many years ago, wrote a little book on why we have so much problems in the world. And we see other people as enemies. When you see another person as an enemy, they're going to see you as an enemy. And it takes, and I think several people have said this, that it starts with us individually, of how we are going to see and work with other people. And be aware when we do something incorrect. You know, sometimes I still have a thing with men, and I go, ah, it's a man thing, you know, or oh my gosh, it's, you know, because I worked with adolescents for so long. Well, that's the age of legalized insanity, you know. I mean, so I mean, we do that, but we have to catch ourselves.
Exactly.
You know.
Thanks.
I have to catch myself.
Anybody else on this part right here? All right then. So this is the one, this is the slide we looked at earlier.
I love the word false. That's a powerful word in this state.
False hierarchies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. I like racism as a powerful system. It is powerful. And then the way that it goes on to say it extends beyond race. Yeah. So generally when it's there, it's much more. So people can, you know, not just hate one group, but their tendency towards that us and they thing is going to be far greater.
Thanks. Thank you. Many of you know that I am a coach, and one of the things that led me to coaching is that I got myself coached. I hired a coach, different coaches along the way in my life, and my training said one way to do life is to let life coach you. So we've all been speaking to that, I think. Let life coach you. It's about dismantling racism. In other words, when I catch myself judging someone else, I catch myself doing it and let it coach me about, let's say, what I value, how I'm going to be, what I believe. Let it coach me to be who I want to be, to show up as my best self. And I think a lot of us have spoken to that this morning. So if you look at this picture here, it's pretty revealing. about how to create equity, the distinction, equality, equity.
Level the playing field.
Level the playing field, yeah. It's like putting a professional tennis player with a beginner and wondering why it's not going to work too well. Any comments, any other comments about this quote from Kendi's book and what it speaks to and of? Okay. We have spoken about this all along this morning, I think, about experiencing racism as Dr. Kendi described it. But have any of you out there experienced racism where you were very clear that you were judged about something about you? Here's one that comes up for me from time to time. Today I can kind of smile about it, but my mom used to say to me, Sharon Ann, you are a scatterbrain.
Oh yeah.
And that hurt my heart. She didn't have any clue. I didn't fight back. I did not fight back. I did not challenge her for calling me that. But it hurt me deeply. And for Kendi, that would be an example of racism. So, have you ever experienced racism?
This is Linda. I experienced it because of my sex, in terms of receiving less pay than a male colleague for doing the same job.
Ah, interesting. Yes. I hope you all heard Linda. Did you?
No.
So,
Go ahead.
so Linda said that she had experienced racism because she saw that she was getting paid less than her male counterpart for doing the same job.
Oh.
I did have that experience once, but I did bring it to the attention of my boss, and it got changed.
Good.
Equal opportunity.
What'd you say, Linda?
I did not let it go on. I took it to the Equal Opportunity Agency at that time and filed a suit. It was rectified.
Great. So I hope you all heard Linda. She took the situation to which department?
I think it was called the Office of Equal Opportunity Employment Benefits. I don't know.
So she didn't just take it. She took it to the proper agency, and it was corrected. Great.
Good.
Anybody else?
I have a question. This is Anne.
Hi, Anne.
My question is then, so in school, when you have bullies who pick on you for whatever, the differences that you have from them, is that considered falling into the same category as a racism?
It would be, yeah. It sure would.
So we have to teach our kids that it's not just being mean, they're being racist.
Say that again, Ann.
So we should teach our kids and teenagers that being mean is a form of racism, and they need to stop it. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And the studies overwhelmingly show that when children are being abused in a family, pets are also being abused. Now, it's because it's becoming more well known, they do it the other way around too. When there's a pet that has been abused, then they also alert child welfare.
Ah,
So, a collaboration between the two.
interesting. Thank you. Great. Anybody else on this one? Have you ever experienced?
This is Karen. This is Sharon. I want to say really quickly when people were talking, it occurred to me that quite often in circles and communities, around here, I'm very uncomfortable with sharing that I'm a New Thought person.
Right. Because?
Strong judgment. Strong judgment.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a rule.
I'm a sinner. I'm a sinner. All those things.
Thanks. Yes. Anybody else on this one? Nope. Going. Do you all remember Malcolm X?
Yep.
Yeah. So he was in the 60s, I believe.
Wow, there's your foot on my neck. Isn't that interesting? Right.
Isn't it interesting?
Yeah.
Can you all read that? Malcolm X, when he was giving a speech, says, "That's not a chip on my shoulder, that's your foot on my neck." So Kendi speaks about Malcolm X in the book and said this: months before being assassinated, Malcolm X said, "That's not a chip on my shoulder, that's your foot on my neck."
Wow.
Yeah. Face the fact that many admirers still refuse to face. Black people can be racist toward white people. What a surprise, huh? What a surprise. Any comments about what Malcolm X said or what Dr. Kendi said? Okay.
It just reinforces how long this has been going on.
Say that again, Karen.
It reinforces how what we think is current today has been there for hundreds of years.
Yes. Been going on for a long time. Do
Reverend
you all know what Ebonics is?
Yes.
And have you all heard Ebonics?
I can think of the movie Airplane when when the guy somebody asks a question and he's speaking in Ibonics and this little old white lady gets up and translates.
Couldn't hear it. Could not hear it.
Can't understand it.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Would you repeat
We
that?
couldn't hear that.
Maya was talking about the movie Airplane, where there was a black person speaking Ebonics, and a little old white lady got up and translated. So American Black English regarded as a language in its own right, rather than as a dialect of standard English. I mean, if you hear, yo, what's good? How would you answer?
Say again.
Say that again.
Say it again.
It's all
just
good.
I was reading the slide. So on one side, on the left side, you see an example of Ebonics. And on the right side is what we would say, what white people would say, or what everyone who is not speaking Ebonics would say. So
I can't see the slide. So
in Ebonics, the question is, yo, what's good? In English, we say, hi, how are you? So just to notice, just an awareness, why do you think Ebonics developed? Sig? Were you going to say something, Sig? No?
well, I know why. It's a kind of a code, and it was something indicative to themselves that they had for themselves. And so it made them feel a little more in power.
Yeah, great. Anybody else want to comment on that?
Yeah, this is Kathy. How would that be different from Cajun, for example, which is, I think, considered a dialective, but not a different language, isn't it? You know, New Orleans Cajun, where I can understand Ebonics, but I can't Cajun.
Yeah. It's kind of like Ebonics.
Yeah.
Yeah. Billy, what do you think?
I was thinking that it's not a whole lot different than like, you know, when somebody speaks Spanish or some other language around you, right? I mean, it's just, it's for them. It's their way to express themselves and kind of exclude those that don't speak it.
There's the key, I think.
Well,
Exclude other us and they.
Anybody else?
I've never.
Reverend Sharon, before you, I wanted to reply to the previous slide, but I guess you didn't see me. I just want to quickly say, as far as how blacks feel about whites and whites feel about blacks, there's an excellent movie. I think the name is called The Best of Enemies. Anybody else hear that? It's a true story about in Durham when they tried to integrate the schools and how the sides were so divided, and they brought in like a moderator to speak to both sides for a week. And it's a true story. The people really let go how they felt about each other, but by the end of 2 weeks, actually, they became good friends. And the black woman and the white man who was the president of the Ku Klux Klan in that area went around talking to people about integration for the schools. So the best of enemies.
Very powerful. What was the name of the movie, Betty?
I think it was The Best of Enemies. I'd check it here, but I don't want to lose the Zoom. So
The Best of Enemies. We can check it out.
In other words,
that's the name of it. You're right, Betty. That's the name.
Yeah, and normally you would say the best of friends, and these were the best of enemies.
Right, right. Very powerful. Very powerful. I was trying to remember just now, based on what you said, Betty, there is, oh, I know what it's called, living room conversations. Along those lines, a forum was developed called Living Room Conversations, where you bring people of divergent beliefs and opinions and values probably together to have a discussion, kind of like we're having here, where you just share your story, share your belief, share your opinions on a topic, let's say like abortion, or a topic like racism. You just share where you are, what your thinking is on it, without a debate. You know, you come to the conversation willing to be 100% open-minded and open-hearted, willing to be that way, so that the motivation is to seek understanding, rather than, I'm not seeking to be right here and get to change someone's mind. I'm just seeking to understand the other, which is what you were talking about, Betty. And I think that's what we're doing here, seeking to understand a very controversial issue.
If I could add on to that regarding that group, the group that I belong to with opposing opinions and so forth, how should I say? Instead of when somebody says something that I don't agree with, I don't say yes, but, because that sort of implies, but you're wrong. Right. Instead, we've learned to say, on the other hand, because that recognizes that person's statement. And then on the other hand, I have a statement also. And it's a nice way to have a conversation and disagree with somebody without having a big conflagration.
Great, great, great. Good thought. Okay, well, we're going to close right now. Are you all okay with that? Does anyone have any burning desire? No? Okay, then let's close with a prayer. Reverend Martini,
Yes.
would you close us with prayer, please?
Okay, I will.
Loud and clear, Billy.
Loud and clear. So as we close our eyes and come together again and feel our connectedness and our oneness, we just surrender to what is right now. Asking again for the awareness of where we stand on these issues of racism. Asking for not only the awareness, but what is ours to do? How are we to change? How are we to make a difference in the world? And we give thanks that we're able to shine our light. So we go forth to do that now with enthusiasm, with joy, with consideration, compassion, and love. And so it is. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Billy. Thank you all so much for being here. It was I thought it was a very fruitful, beautiful discussion. You might consider, as Billy was suggesting in her prayer for us, that consider what is your takeaway for today. So as we all go back into our day, did we hear something that was important that we can take into not only today, but maybe going forward? So again, thank you, and I'll see you on the 29th. Lots of love.
Reverend Sharon?
Yes.
It's Betty. Can you, I have a picture of a third grade class in the Title I school that I monitor in. Can you click on where it says share screen and give me the permission to show that? Because I think it's a message for all of us. You know, if you go down, there's a little arrow next to the green arrow.
I don't know if you can share it, Sharon, so I will.
Okay.
Do you see them?
Not yet. Kathy, have you got it?
No, where is it? Because I'm not seeing it on yours.
The little, no, you have to be the host.
Yeah, I'm the host. That's why I'm doing it.
Okay. All right. In the green box, there's an arrow, but next to that green box, right next to it, there's a little carrot down, up and down arrow. If you click on that, it should open up and say allow or disallow sharing.
Oh, I already have it allowed. So can you just accept it? Can you share your screen now? Because it's set so that you can.
Yeah. Okay. Let me get back to my screen. Oh dear. I probably went too far. Don't go away. You know, I have the group on the side there, but the picture, I don't have the full screen. That's too bad. Did that come on?
Can you send that to us, Betty, and I'll have it for next week?
All right, sure. What email address do you want me to use?
Kathy, would you get it, please?
Yeah, Kathy spelled with a C, C-A-T-H-Y.
Yeah.
At unitysc.city.org.
Org. Okay. The reason I wanted to show it is there are black, white, yellow, blondes, dark hair, blue eyes, this whole bunch of kids, and they're friends, you know, at this age, they're friends. They help each other, they do things together. They're sad that they're not together now. It's so bad. We just have to pray that between this age and their teenagers that they don't become jaded and that they can continue to love each other. Right. I will send that to you though. It's just such a perfect picture of
Thanks.
unity.
See you all next week.
Okay, thank you.
Bye. Thank you.